Hey guys, welcome back to the Leverage Advantage. So today we are very humbled, honored, and grateful to have Darrah Brustein with us. Now, Darrah is an author. She's also a two-time founder with a payment processing company spanning 38 states in the USA, and also a networking events company which serves over 30,000 people. Now, she regularly contributes to Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Thrive Global on networking, entrepreneurship, and creating a life of your own design. Now, she's been featured in over 300 press outlets, including Time, CNN, Huffington Post, Fox, and Mashable, all built on the back of her own network. And she's on a mission to help others who are disenchanted with sleep while you're dead culture, sleep when you're dead culture, forgive me, and chasing others people's definition of success to build a life of their own design. Thank you so much for being with us today, Darrah.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
I love, for me, one of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on the show is because you talk about this living life and creating a life of your design, which I think just so many people don't seem to have that strategic objective when they're living their life. They're to me, it looks like they're just drifting, going with the flow. And when I go to the financial district in Singapore, it's called Raffles Place, right? And every time I go to Raffles Place in the morning, I just feel like there are just so many people who are like they're walking dead. They're just not living life. Their eyes are not open. No, granted, there are some people who just love their life. And, whether they're an entrepreneur or they're an employee, they know exactly what they're in it for. But most people just seem to be drifting. So tell me a little bit more about the Life by Design.
It's exactly what you're talking about, that, I don't know Singaporean culture quite like I know American culture. It's where I was born and raised. But I think it's just a general practice that we are socialized in whatever our culture is to have certain narrow definitions of what success is and to chase after that, or the opposite, to debunk it and feel like, okay, that's not for me, but not know what your North Star is. So, after my own adventures in chasing down what everyone told me success looked like, which for me, I was told that's go to school, go to college, get great grades, graduate, get a well-paying job, buy the house, get married, happily ever after. And when I graduated from college at age 22, like most Americans do, I had almost a 4.0, which is, again, I don't know how grading systems translate, but that was near perfect. And I had double majored and I had done all of the extracurriculars and felt like I was checking the boxes. And then upon graduating, I got a seemingly dream job working in the fashion industry, which for me was literally a dream. And then I got laid off. And then I got another job and I got laid off. And I got another job and I got laid off. And then I bought a house and got laid off. And I was coming to realize that this map I had been given wasn't working. And I kept thinking it must have been me, that clearly something is wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. I'm not capable or talented enough. And when I looked back objectively, as easy as it was to think those things, I realized that wasn't the case. But what was the case is that I was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and manufacture my life in a way that other people told me was the way to do it. And so now, through all the work that I've done, I look at everything through a shifted lens of what is a life that matters to me, and then how do I design and craft everything else to fit within that. So on a broad scale, for me, that means how do I be in deep intentional relationships with friends and family and my partner? How do I contribute more and give more to this world than I extract from it? And how do I make sure that I'm constantly evolving, learning, and growing? And through that, how do I make sure that however I'm choosing to spend my time professionally and otherwise is all working in favor of that as opposed to against it?
I love it. I love it. And, in my experience, well, I'll share with you a little bit about Singaporean culture then. I think Singaporeans tend to live very conventionally. And, like almost everybody, I believe even more so than in the United States, everybody's it's a very Asian culture. So Asians are like, go to school, get good grades, go to university, go get a job, and then go get married, retire, live happily after. Happily ever after. It's exactly the same, right? um, for me, life was a little bit different because I was taught to. Well, I wasn't taught by my parents to challenge convention. I kind of developed a mind of my own when I went to junior college, right? And I learned that I actually enjoyed challenging convention, and I looked a little bit into the future at what life would be like for anybody to go out, go to university, get a job. And most people that I saw 10 or 20 years older than me were miserable. And to me, I was very cognizant of the kind of life I wanted to live. I was also very conscious, right? I know I wanted to have freedom of my time. I'll still work as much as I need to work, but having the ability to choose when I want to work was very important. Again, I wanted to add more. I didn't want to be a carbon footprint. I didn't want to just live for 70, 80 years if I'm lucky, and then just be a use of energy, right? I wanted to be able to contribute. And that's why, and the other thing, I think, when I was looking at your bio, the other thing that struck me was this: I was willing to play the long game, right? Because I knew exactly the kind of life I wanted to live. And if that meant I had to live a slightly different life early on in order to achieve that life later on, I was willing to do that. How would you recommend somebody starting to live a life by their design?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that I couldn't agree more with your comment about playing the long game. It's, for one piece, just how I think in general you should live. I talk a lot about relationships and the power of them. And so much of that is hinged on playing the long game. And you're completely right that by designing your life and looking at the bigger picture doesn't mean that you're going to access it in its entirety quickly or today. So you're completely right. It's how do you take those steps? So I think the beginning part to your question is to stop and do the self-analysis and reflection in the first place, to discern between what have I been programmed to say that I want and what do I actually want? And that is not an easy step. So in glossing over it in a short answer, it may seem like I'm making light of it when I'm not, because for one, I think it's an evolving question, and it's something that I'm continually evolving and evaluating for myself. And two, it takes a lot of willpower to slow down enough and be quiet enough to figure that out, and to know that sometimes what you want, you may never have experienced. You may not have examples of people around you who are living it. You may not even know it's an option. So it's one of those things, like any general brainstorm, I think, where you just free form think and throw things against a wall, figuratively, allowing for the brainstorm to be the brainstorm, and then sitting on it for a while. So some tools and habits that have helped me in this process, I'll share quickly. One is just the general practice of meditation, because I think in a broad spectrum, it helps to quiet your mind, and it helps you to discern between, what is my instinct telling me? What am I filtering in? What's the difference between those messages? And I deeply believe in the power of instinct and intuition, and that we all have it, but we're often clouding it and making it more complicated because we're so tapped out from it. Like, no matter where you live in the world, no matter how remote or populous, there are so many things competing for our time and attention. And when we don't take any time to just be reflective or quiet or meditative or prayerful, or however that looks for each person, I think we get further and further away from our own individual truth. So for me, it's having a meditation practice, which I am not perfect at. I don't want to sit here and act like I'm some guru. However, when I am practicing, and by practicing, I mean sitting for 20 minutes quietly, sometimes with a mantra, sometimes following my breath, other times just letting the thoughts be what they are. That is step one. Step two, I remember vividly when I was 23, sitting down and doing a 10-year exercise where I thought, 10 years from now, what would my dream life look like? And I wrote it all down. Then once I wrote it all down, I thought, okay, what does it cost to do each of these things? And not only was that an eye-opening experience because it allowed me to realize that the life I wanted actually cost a lot less than I think in our minds we think our dream lives are going to cost, which makes it a lot more attainable. And I felt more motivated to work towards it. But it also helped me to just see what's the big vision and what am I working towards? Like, what's the why? Why am I getting up every day and working? And is it just like because bigger is better, which I don't believe. Like in growing companies, yeah, it's been cool to grow them. It's been cool to get new accolades and achievements and make more money. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that thing you're working for and you don't understand why you're doing it, it can all be quite unfulfilling. So mapping out what is it you want your life to look like 10 years from now, and then paring that back and saying, okay, well, what would 5 years look like? What would 3 years look like? What would 1 year from today look like? And what are the steps I need to take to move me inch by inch in those directions? Because I think a false narrative that we're often told is that things happen overnight, that success is automatic, or that you see the rags to riches story, or the company who was in their garage and then got acquired by Facebook for $1 jillion. And those obviously happen, but those are called unicorns for a reason, and they are very rare. So I'd say rather than strive to be the unicorn, strive to be the person who diligently and persistently works towards something that they actually want and is in interest and alignment of their own wants, needs, and desires.
Awesome. I think you touched on a really important point. And I just like to expand on that a little bit, just from my own experience. I think a lot of people tend to get into this trap where they believe the more money they make, the happier they're going to be, right? And so they feel like they need to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $10 million a year, but that gap just never gets smaller, right? Because we're driven not just by how much money we make, but maybe by achievement or by being able to spend time with our family. So I want to share with you a little story about my mentor, actually. And my mentor is this crazy competitive guy. He wants to win at everything. And for a period of time, business was so good. It was growing and it was growing, and he kept pushing the gas. And he was a man that stood for freedom, right? His business was all about freedom. But when you looked at his calendar, it was anything but freedom. His appointments were filled out with work and work and work. And only recently he realized that that's not what he wanted. That was not what was going to make him happy. And I think the myth that we need to, the more money we make, the happier we'll be, is so wrong. And science even improves this, right? The marginal amount of money you're going to make beyond, say, $60,000, of course it differs from country to country, is not going to make you that much happier. And I'll share with you the way that I looked at it was this. When we first started our company, we were looking to be one of those unicorns. And as we grew, I realized that that's not really what I wanted. Like, if I could make $100,000 a year working 4 hours a week, I'd rather do that than make $1 million a year working 40 hours a week. And that's eventually how we ended up crafting or molding the business to be able to give us that lifestyle rather than the $1 million a year, 40 hours a week. So yeah, I mean, if you don't know what you want, you're just going to follow the flow and go for as much money as you can.
Exactly. Like, I think there's two different ways to look at going with the flow. On the one hand, I think going with the current as the current takes you is often sort of this, in a non-woo-woo way, this universal guide explaining to you, like, go with that.
Yeah.
But you have to be awake, like I talked about, and like be tapped in to understand that, versus just checking the boxes and thinking everyone else is doing this. This must be the right path. And you made such a great point about, you looked ahead at the lives that the people were living and thought, do I want that life? And I don't think enough of us take the time to do that and say, if I keep following these steps that all these other people are doing, let me see what their lives look like. And is that what I want? And to the point about money, I think generally it's just a conversation people are so afraid to talk about in any way, shape, or form. But it's so important, because who cares if you have millions in your bank, but you still feel unhappy or lonely or unfulfilled? And you can have them both. That is absolutely a certainty. But they don't they're not a guarantee. Money does not therefore equal fulfillment, and neither does not chasing money. So, you know,
Yeah, that's true.
neither is mutually exclusive.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that you mentioned, I had just this one point is, like you said, I think a lot of people have this image that, you know, they're the total opposite. You know, I don't want to go chase that money. I just want to, you know, money's evil. And but they don't realize as well that you can't give from an empty cup. I think, you know, for a lot of people, like say yourself and myself, we're very impact driven, we're very mission driven. And having that attitude of money is not important doesn't serve us in terms of our mission. Um, I wanted to share this point actually right before that is this. I think one of the biggest things that helped me on this journey, and I'd love to see whether it's similar to you, is one of the biggest things that served me on this journey is doing away with comparing, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether my neighbor's got a bigger car, my neighbor's got a smaller car. The fact is, there's always going to be someone with a bigger car, and there's always going to be someone with a smaller car. The size of your car doesn't matter, right? Or your grades, or how handsome your husband is, or how pretty your wife is, or how, you know, I think that once I let go of that comparing, life was so much easier, because I was then just living my life, not living my life in relation to somebody else. How was that experience for you?
It's such a great point. I think it's often called the comparison trap, because that's exactly what it is. It's a never-ending trap. And for me, I still struggle with it. It's not something, I think that it's like everything else, it's been a process where what used to maybe be debilitating for me on a comparison standpoint of thinking, like I remember actively thinking when I was losing all of those jobs, watching my friends blaze by me and thinking, wow, they really know what they're doing. They have a clear delineated path. They're making great money. They're getting the titles and the awards, and thinking to myself, wow, I am such a loser and they are just doing it all. And then what I came to realize is that, you know, that was their path and my path was different, and we were going to get to different outcomes in our own ways. And now I think, and we've talked around this a lot, what I think the bigger challenge is goal-driven, goal-oriented people, is that each time you hit the next level that you have set for yourself, that next goal or standard, that then becomes the baseline. And then there's another thing. And so it's like constantly doing this up, which is great from a growth perspective. Like, as someone who, one of my priorities in life and highest values is growth and learning, it's wonderful. But on the other hand, you have to counterweight it and think, again, why am I doing that? And is it all in service of whatever the bigger picture is for me? Because that can be daunting. And that's something, especially in business, that I struggle with, where it's important to have goals and it's important to reach towards things and stretch yourself and see what else you can achieve and accomplish, rather than getting stagnant and stale. And once you do that, you've got to push yourself even further. And sometimes I think I've had to allow myself to stop and rest and be in a place to enjoy it for a minute and appreciate the fruits of that, so that I can go to the next thing. And so sometimes the comparison trap is not just outward, it's inward. It's, well, you did that thing before and you hit that bar, so gross. Like, how did you only do this thing that time? Like, running an events company of 30,000 people, we have it all the time where, you know, we'll sell out an event of 600 people and then the next month we'll have 400, and I'll think, what a failure. And then I think back to 7 years ago when we could barely get 100 people in a room, and I'm like, what I would have given to have 400 people in a room. But my mind is now reprogrammed. So it often takes those moments to stop and say, how am I devaluing or hurting myself by comparing internally? And the outward comparison, if it's not driving you positively, try and separate yourself and say, do I actually want the things that I'm comparing here? And if you're comparing because it's a true motivator and a driver, then great. But all of the time, I think you need to have that self-analysis going to make sure that it's all positive and in favor of your goals and your visions, and not just something you're automatically doing to chase down dreams that other people are chasing and telling you you should also chase. honestly to make themselves feel better about chasing them themselves.
Absolutely, man. What you just said actually reminds me of a story. I think I was in my 20s and I was running my own business, my mid to late 20s, and I was in the car talking to my friend, and I told him I felt like I really at that point I really felt like a failure, and I didn't tell anybody except this one friend, because all my friends, all the guys that I went to the army with, all my peers, they were high rolling bankers and lawyers and accountants, investment bankers, and they were earning a lot of money. They had high flying careers. And here I was, just an entrepreneur, say making $2,000, $4,000 a month, right? And that conversation put me on a path to realizing that we can't compare our path, or our yardstick isn't the same as everybody else's yardstick. So they're playing a different game, and they're doing great at their game, and we are playing a different game. And while it might seem like we're sucking right now compared to how they're doing in their game, we're actually doing pretty good. You know,
you're right. And you talked about the long game, and it's exactly that it's like the tortoise and the hare. Maybe someone sprinted out ahead, but you are pacing yourself to get to where you need to go.
Awesome. I'd love to learn a little bit about who inspires you.
So many people. I mean, it's the most trite answer, but so true, that I have been an Oprah junkie my entire life, and remain inspired by someone who came from the least likely of places to not only become independently successful, but to be so transformative to other people on personal levels of inspiration, but also to change communities and give back in the way that she does. So she's hugely motivating for me. And then there's a lot of entrepreneurs and writers that I really look up to, because they are playing a similar game that I've chosen to play, and they're doing it in a way that I admire. Like Marie Forleo is an entrepreneur that I really love. I love that she blends so many of the things that I care about. She blends community, she blends authenticity, she blends lifestyle and business education. And she does it in a way that is true to her and that people resonate and respond with. So I really respect and admire her, and I respect the way she did it. I respect that she wasn't about hacking her way to success or buying followers or trying to find the shortcut. That she has spent, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's like 16, 17 years getting to where she is now, where everyone wants to be the next Marie Forleo, but it took her all of those years to get there. So I really respect her. There's a lot of other people, like Bethany Frankel is someone, if you're familiar with, who started Skinny Girl and is a housewife of New York, who I admire because, again, she did it her way. She knew her whole life she was going to be successful. She knew she was going to be an entrepreneur. No one else believed in her. She found a way through an unconventional path to join one of the most, actually it wasn't at the time even a thing, but now one of the most popular reality shows at the time, just took a chance and grew a platform and grew an audience that way. And then was able to resonate with them through a relationship through media to grow a brand and sell it for a reported $100+ million. And again, I want to be very clear that I'm not admiring of her simply because she made a lot of money. I'm admiring of her because she created her own path, and she did it fully confident in her own ability, not needing other people to coddle her or tell her it was going to be okay, or she didn't, again, look for shortcuts. She sort of bobbed when other people weaved, which I actually think is like a Gary Vaynerchuk thing, and I don't know where that came from. But I really admire and respect people like that. Her and one other is this woman, Julie Agner-Clark, who is not a name most people will know. She is the founder of Baby Einstein, the children's education products. And when I wrote my children's book series about 5 years ago on financial literacy, my dream and my roadmap for it was to be the Baby Einstein of financial literacy. And so I reached out to Julie. We developed a long distance friendship, and she was very lovely. And I admire her for a number of reasons. One, again, because of her success. And two, because when she hit that level of success, she still wasn't like too big or too good to be responsive to someone. And I say that with a caveat, because one of the articles I've written of many for Forbes is about the idea of picking people's brains, and that it's something that I think an asker often thinks is the responsibility or obligation of the person to whom they're asking to say yes to them. When I think no matter what, no matter the circumstances, no matter the ask, no matter the relationship, everyone should have free will and free right to say no. And this may or may not be the same in Singaporean culture, but in the US, especially as a woman, saying no often comes with an immense amount of guilt. And it becomes very hard. And people, I think, often take advantage of that knowingly or unknowingly to get what they want out of a situation. So as a great example, and I use Julie as an example in this article, when I reached out to her, I spent hours doing research on watching every video, reading every article, reading everything on her website to know that if I was going to reach out to her and ask her for anything, time to write to an email, time to get on the phone, or otherwise, that I had spent the time and investment to know that what I was asking her, I couldn't just find online. And I think that that resonated with her because she could tell from my email, even though it wasn't long, that it was one, sincere, two, that I had done my research, and three, that I didn't come with an expectation, that I just said, here's what my question is or questions. This is why, and like, here's why I'm grateful for you. I complimented her because I think that's important too, to let them know like you really respect them. This isn't some like chain email you're sending around. And she was generous enough to come off of what to me seemed like a pedestal, but she didn't treat it that way at all, and help me. Yet I wouldn't have begrudged her if she didn't, because she had no obligation or need to do that.
Absolutely.
But even though that doesn't exactly dovetail with this conversation, I think it's important, and it's something that keeps coming up for me as a lesson, that every time I say no, it's often responded to with some amount of criticism, when I really hope that people can begin to understand that we all have the same challenges and stresses and time constraints, and that we can't say yes to everyone no matter how much we want to. And people like you and I create content to give the access at people's whim freely to allow them to have that. And so it's the smallest thing you can do to take advantage of that first, before you just say, hey, I have general questions, I expect 30 minutes of your time, when all of that probably exists online already.
Yeah. I'm a little bit ruthless, really. If somebody asks me a question that they can easily find online, not just from me or somebody else, I just tell them no. And I have to be honest, sometimes I'm a little bit sarcastic. So I send them like a link. I tell them, okay, so just go to this. It's lmgtfy.com, right? So let me Google that for you, you know. So I completely understand. One of the things that you mentioned about, you know, as a woman, sometimes saying no makes you feel guilty. I think I'm very sure that's an experience a lot of women have. But sometimes I feel guilty as well, you know. But we can't say yes to everybody.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, we've come towards the end of the interview, but I think there's something I wanted to ask from you is I'd love for you to share a little bit about your turning point or your epiphany when you decided that this was going to be your path.
So I touched on it at the beginning of the conversation a bit, which was after following the path that was charted for me and this epitome of check the boxes type of success, and had lost job after job after job, and then bought the house at age 23 after getting a restraining order against my landlord and being fearful, and then losing another job and thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be 23-year-old homeless? Like, and I don't mean that even like in a jestful way. Like, I was just generally terrified of what was going to happen, because financially I didn't think I could support myself. And I didn't know how to hold a job, apparently. Like, I would put my heart and soul into these companies. I would work tirelessly and endlessly. I was successful. Like in my first company, I hit my 3-year sales goal in 10 months. Yet the company was going under. I came out of school in 2006. The economy was in a really bad spot. And I spent those first couple years chasing a falling economy. And so it was at that point where I sort of had the wake up call and the kick in the pants to say, you've always wanted to be a business owner. The word entrepreneur was a bit foreign to me, but I didn't know what the thing was. And then the risk profile didn't seem to exist anymore, because it historically would have been, well, keep the safe job, get your salary and your benefits. But that wasn't even a thing for me consistently. So I felt like, well, geez, I'd rather take the reins into my own hands and know each morning what the status is, whether it's good or bad, and not think, hey, is this the day I'm going to come in and find out I don't have a job or the company is going under? So for me, it really didn't feel as risky as so many people speak to, saying, oh my gosh, entrepreneurship, you must be so high risk. And actually I'm not. I'm fairly risk averse. Yet I came to realize that these falsifications of stability were not working. And that was the kick in the pants that I needed to start doing the internal work to figure out what are the next steps to start moving in a direction that might be more fulfilling for me.
Awesome. So if I get this right, it's you finally realized, so you were one of those people that realized early on that job security is a myth after losing job after job after job.
Yeah. And it was for me at least. And while other people may not have experienced that, I still think that the loyalty that once existed in corporate America, at least, where people would have a lifetime position at a job and they'd have a pension and even severance packages if they left, like that's a rarity now. And I think even if you work in a corporate job, I'd probably be the type to want to have a side hustle somewhere because I've learned my lesson. So now I have multiple side hustles and they're all my full-time hustle, combined. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We've had such a great conversation. I know the audience is going to take so much away from it. If anybody would love to know more about what you do and who you help, where can they go?
My website's probably the easiest. It's darrah.co, darrah.co.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Darrah. I won't keep you for very long. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, check out the relevant video here. And don't forget to subscribe to us for more marketing tips, techniques, strategies that are working for us, or just more behind the scenes fun. See ya.